Hit create. And I'm going to reset my workspace. Workspace, reset essentials, classic. So one of your fellow students told me that she just updated to Illustrator 2019 and the panels didn't look the same. That's because when she uploaded or updated the software, it took her to a different workspace. So make sure that you're working in Essentials Classic. Right? That's the one that I'm going to be working in. Okay, so the feature that I wanted to go over are called patterns. And patterns can be found in your swatches. Let me tear this open. All right, so you hover over these icons, you'll notice that it'll tell you what it's called. Usually it gives you a CMYK breakdown. And then all of a sudden we can see that there are some icons that look like patterns. This one over here is called foliage, and this one's called pompadour. Right? So these patterns can be assigned both on the fill or the stroke. So right now I'm focusing on the fill. So I'm going to click on foliage. So you'll notice it puts the pattern on that object. You can also click on the stroke and put a pattern there. So you can see I put pompadour on the stroke, but it's very difficult to see a pattern on a stroke unless the stroke is relatively large. Right? So now I can start seeing the pattern on the stroke because it's bigger. But a pattern can be used like any other color. Now let me remove the pattern from the stroke. Patterns, as you can see, if I make this shape really big, will either scale up or not scale based on my scale tool settings. So if I go to my scale tool, you'll notice that there's an option that says transform patterns. You may or may not want the patterns to transform. So if you don't want them to transform, uncheck that. And so this is what's going to happen now when I make the box bigger or smaller. You see how it stays the same size? Right? Now, if I select transform, when I scale it down, the pattern should scale down with it now. So you can see that the scale tool has the feature that will allow you to scale this up and down. If you go to your swatches, you'll notice the library icon. It looks like a bunch of little books. If you click on this, you'll notice that there's a submenu for patterns. And there's a number of different libraries that you might want to check out. So the one that I like to look at is called Decorative Legacy. So if I go to the Decorative Legacy panel, these are the patterns that are available there. Let me make these thumbnails bigger. You can see the patterns here. So if I click on these, you'll notice, whoops, let me make sure I'm on the fill. Click on these, you'll notice these are some of the patterns that the software gives me that I can possibly work with. Okay? You'll notice every time I click on a swatch from the library, it adds it to my swatch panel. So all of these have been added as I click through this library. See, every time I click on a new pattern, it adds it. Make sense? Okay, well this is great, and as you can see, there are other patterns that you can possibly work with. There are animal patterns. There are patterns that are called Vonster. I guess this is like some specific designer. Right, so yay, patterns. Well, this is great. There's these patterns in the software, but what if I want to make a pattern? How do I make my own pattern? I think that would be more interesting. So how do you do that? Okay, so I'm going to show you how to construct a very basic pattern. I'm going to go to my brush tool over here. So this is my brush tool. I go to my brush tool, and I am going to select a red stroke and no fill. Okay, red stroke, no fill, brush tool, and I'm going to draw some vectors, a little texture. All right, so I just made a little texture, and I'm going to grab this. Notice I'm selecting all of that line work, and I'm going to drag and drop it into my swatch panel. And when I do that, you'll notice that it creates a new pattern swatch. See, when I hover over it, it says new pattern swatch. Okay, so let me do that one more time. I'm going to draw a different pattern. Move this to the side. Right, this time I'm going to make I'll make a blue one. Right, so I'm just, and you can draw the vectors however you want. It doesn't matter. You can use the primitive tools, you can use the pencil. I'm just deciding to use grab this, drag and drop it to the swatch panel, and now have another pattern. Okay, move this to the side. All right, I'm going to make a primitive. I'll select a polygon. All right, make a primitive, and I'm going to fill this with one of these patterns. So you can see there's the pattern in the object now. Okay, or I can assign that other pattern that I made. Okay, so it's pretty lovely. I like it. But I don't want the pattern to tile like this. I want it to overlap better. I noticed that some of these others had a better overlap feature. So the patterns have options where you can define how they are tiling. So if I go to my view menu, it should be under, maybe it's, oh, excuse me, it's a panel. It's under window. And there it is, pattern options, pattern options. Right. Another way to get to the options is to look for the panel you want to change. I want to change this one, and then just double click on it. Boop, boop. Okay, so you'll notice that when I double click on it, it looks like it went into isolation mode. So see how it shows one tile, and it shows the other tiles within the pattern. Okay, and it opens up this little pattern option box. So the pattern option box first gives me a tile type. The tile type by default is called what? What does it say right there? Grid. Now you'll notice that there's different tile types. Okay, so this is what brick by row will look like. See how it shifts it? This is brick by column. This is hex by column. Hex by row. So depending on which tile type you select, you can also change how it's being offset. This is a ratio. So you could do 1 1/4, 1 1/3, half, so on and so forth. This width and height feature describes how close or far apart they are. So I'm changing the width. That describes how close or far apart they are. So if I make that width and height smaller, you'll notice that it tightens up the pattern. If I go to hex, I can also change this overlap. Okay, so let's say I like this. This is what I was looking for. I can either save what I've done, I can cancel or make a copy. I'm going to make a copy. Right, so I'm going to click this Save a Copy button. So here's my original, and there's my copy. Do you see they look different from one another? So there's the one that I modified. Right, let me get out of my shape. Okay, so there's the original. Whoops, is it not changing? It's not changing. It's the same. What happened? I don't know what happened. Looks like maybe I just I didn't do that right. Let's try that again. Save a copy. Okay. Skip out. Looks like it's overriding all of the previous ones. But maybe I don't have it selected. Yeah, okay, there we go. There's my original, there's the new one. Original, new. Okay, so that's how you make a pattern and that's how you customize it. Any questions or concerns about that? Yes, Maya?
Why would you save and copy it instead of just done?
Let's say you wanted the original for whatever reason, but clearly I was hitting save a copy and it looks like it's acting like done in my session.
If you press done, it overwrites the initial one.
Yeah, it will overwrite the initial one if you hit done. It's if I make a copy, it should leave the original one alone, but it's in my session right now, it's overwriting it. It shouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Thomas.
How do you get to the options?
The easiest way to get to the options is to double click on the icon. So once you do that, it takes you into this preview that looks like isolation mode. Does that answer your question, Thomas? Any other questions? No? Okay, good. Right, I'm gonna delete these. I don't need these anymore. Oh, by the way, check out the size of this object that I made for the pattern. When I apply the pattern to it, you'll notice that it's the same size. Okay, so if I would have made this smaller, let me make a smaller one. So when I uploaded this version, I made it really small. Before I uploaded it, you'll notice that it's relative to the size that I upload. It's relative to the size that I upload. So if I make the object really big, it's going to be a really big tile. If I make the object really small, it's going to be a really small tile. Okay, so just be mindful of that. That when you make the tile, it's going to be based on the size that you uploaded it.